Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Love for the Nintendo Switch. And as a single man, you know that review is going to be accurate. but honestly, if you are interested in this game, watching the review, Love is the prequel to a game called Kuso, which also contains 100% of the content of the game Love. So again, if you are interested, for only a couple dollars more, you can have both games, and I would highly suggest it. But getting back into the review of Love, there is absolutely no story to be had because it is intentionally an incredibly reduced, minimalistic retro platformer. And while I'm sure you could probably infer some stuff about what could possibly be a story, don't worry about it. It is purely speed-running, punishing platforming, and competitive score chasing. However, despite it being as reduced as humanly possible to still be considered a video game, that doesn't mean that there's nothing to offer, and honestly, I had a great time playing it. All you can do is run and jump, and that's it. At least as far as the game's action is concerned, because there is one other thing that the developers threw in to make their game Love and Kuso actually stand out amongst some certain other platformers. And that is the in-game checkpoint system. Other than the directional buttons, whether it's the joystick or the D-pad, you really only have three other inputs for the game, whether it's to respawn, to jump, or to set a checkpoint. And while I have played other platforming games that allowed you to set a checkpoint, like one of them somewhere in the level, which honestly was really terrible if you end up putting it in the wrong place, Love lets you put the checkpoint anywhere you want, as many times as you want, through the entire duration of the gameplay. And while you might think that that makes the game incredibly easy, or possibly way too easy for some of the hardcore platforming fans out there, there is one caveat, and that is that you actually have to be standing on a firm, solid ground, or you can't place the checkpoint. And though it's not in the eShop description, as that last little fact is, if anything actually touches the checkpoint you set, it will pop out of existence, and you won't have it to rely on anymore. So despite having the option of infinite checkpoints, you actually do have to develop your own platforming skill if you really want to make it to the end of the game. Other than that, the main staple 16 levels have several different ways to actually engage with them. Whether you want to play with infinite lives, a select number of lives, or in the amazing YOLO mode where you literally only live once. Then if you hit a spike or fall off a platform, that is the end of the game, so you'll just have to kind of get good. Especially for the competitive gamers out there, or the real die-hard technical platforming fans, there is a good amount of replay value, even though you can probably beat the entire game in about 45 minutes. And I'd have to say the challenge is real, because when I first loaded it up, I played with 100 lives to make it to the end of the first 16 levels, and I probably blew about 30 of them in the first level. I mean, I'm not proud of that. And I didn't actually manage to make it to the end of the game before I exhausted all of my 100 lives. And getting a score of F, of course I tried to start over, and on only my second playthrough I made it to the end of all 16 levels, and I think I had about 64 or 65 lives left. And so while the platforming arguably is fairly difficult, it is definitely fair. But moving into the game's presentation, honestly looking at the graphics, it's obviously pretty darn minimal. But even with the obscene level of reductive minimalism in the visual presentation, there's still some things that I found absolutely hilarious, like the way that your character runs like Naruto, and the fact that nearly every single platforming level just seemed to create its own unique story, and it made the gameplay really engrossing despite being very, very simple. The audio soundtrack was amazing. Apparently it was custom made for the game, and it's one of those that you could really sit down and jam out to. But that being said, there are a couple of things that you'd want to know before diving into Love. First off, the game has absolutely nothing to do with love or lust or eroticism in any way, shape, or form. And if that's what you're going for, you can probably play hentai versus evil. But otherwise is the fact I brought up in the very beginning of the review. If you've forgotten, this game is completely encapsulated in its sequel, Kuso. So if you are interested, go buy that one. There's no reason to spend your money twice unless you really, really want to support the developer. But on notes of actual gameplay is certainly the link. There are the 16 levels, there's a couple of level remixes and some other stuff thrown in. But to fully experience the game, like I said, is probably another one of those under an hour indies. But even then, for the $2.99 price tag, even when it's not on sale, given the quality of the game, I'd say $2.99 is worth it. But other than that, the only thing I can call out from an actual gamer's perspective regarding platformers and platformer difficulties is the couple of blind jumps they throw in. There are some amazing hidden mechanics, like learning how to time moving platforms. And I don't just mean any moving platform, I mean the ones that bounce you across the screen. Because there's a certain single frame where they launch you just a little bit further. And while those kind of things are super, super cool, diving off of a parapet and not knowing where you're gonna land is inarguably cheap. Now, with hundreds of lives and the ability to set checkpoints anywhere you want, unless, again, you're playing on YOLO mode, there's really no penalty for messing up a jump. But even then, given the duration of those jumps and the fact that you can steer your character back and forth even in freefall, if you did have some god-level reflexes, you could probably catch yourself in midair and land the jump even without seeing where you're going. But I'm not that good. Looking at it as an entire experience though, honestly, this was a really fun game, and it was a real breath of fresh air from some of the stinkers that I've played recently that I didn't really even think were worth reviewing. And so the couple of you that suggested I review this game in the comments from the last video, thank you. Because in all honesty, the critiques I mentioned are pretty much the only things I could even think to critique about the game. It's so reduced, it's so minimalistic, it's so straightforward, and it is so professionally done with its accuracy and its control scheme. There's really nothing to complain about. So if you are a platforming fan, if you want a short experience or something that you can replay in bouts just to kind of score chase, Love or its sequel Kuso are gonna be must-haves. But for anyone who wants a story, for anyone who wants a little more adventure, you're probably not gonna get that from these titles. But anyway, that does about wrap up the review of Love, now on the Nintendo Switch. And so if you did enjoy the review, if you found it interesting, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a comment or a like to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. Because I do actually put out 2 reviews a week on Mondays and Fridays of brand new indie game content. And with thousands of indie games out there and new and unique ones coming out literally every single day, chances are, whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, if it's on the eShop, if it's on the Switch, you're probably gonna find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamers. As always, thanks for watching.